Hello, dudes and dudettes. Today we are going to take a look at Hikaru Nakamura against Wesley. And status quo is that Nakamura needs to win. He needs to come back in the match somehow, and this is a game where he goes all in. He does his best, but is it going to be enough to take down Wesley who has been incredibly solid? It certainly won't be easy, and let's see what happened in the game. So Nakamura continues with e4, e5, and he changes things up here, and he plays a bishop's opening with bishop c4 in this position. A very interesting decision. He doesn't think that he gets enough after the normal knight of 3, knight c6, bishop c4. I do not think he was too content, so he decided to play something else with a bishop c4 here. So knight of 6 is the main line, e3. I believe Magnus played this with white as well. I can't really remember which game that was. Maybe it even was Nakamura against Magnus. I can't recall it, but this is what happened. But here, the black player in that game, I have no clue actually, but they played c6, which is the main move. However, Wesley plays something else, which is knight c6. This is the other main move, which again could transpose to an Italian with knight f3, bishop c5. But Nakamura instead, he plays the extra option, or one of the extra options with knight c3, which is a very interesting choice. The position now becomes quite reminiscent of a Vienna, which I can quickly show. That is e4, e5, knight c3, knight of 6, bishop c4. And you can see that it's very, very similar. The plan is f4 often, and these positions are very interesting and very sharp. Knight a5 is one of the main moves here. And that is also what Wesley does here, plays knight a5. And it's very interesting. Nakamura doesn't care. I think queen f3 here is a move. I mean, I've played the Vienna a lot myself due to one of my friends did show me that back in the days. So queen f3 here, I believe, is very interesting, but knight e2 as well is certainly not a bad try. The point is that white doesn't really care about this pawn structure, which, you know, on the first look, it doesn't look so good for white. And indeed, I don't think white has a huge advantage, but it's a position where it's surprisingly unpleasant to play black. It's not so simple because you want to play d5, but this move is very hard to achieve. I have bishop g5, I can often play queen d3 and rook d1, and you're pretty much never going to play d5, and that's very annoying. Another thing is that if you play c6, I can even play rook d1 and bishop a3, and d6 will become weak, so I understand that Wesley instead he went for c6 here. Now d5 could come with a tempo in some lines. So Nakamura, he chooses to avoid that, and he plays bishop e3. Of course, there was nothing wrong with a normal move like castles, but he went for bishop d3, bishop b3, d6, castles. The plan here is f4, which we see here. It makes sense to try to open up the position a little bit, maybe even potentially push f5, but that is a move you gotta be a little bit careful of. Because if I'm able to control the black squares here, then I'm going to do well as black. For example, castles f5, I would then simply be able to play something like knight e8, and then I could play bishop g5 in the future. Of course, in this case, it's not such a big of a deal for white. Imagine that I play f5, let's say I do something like this, and then I play h3 and something like b8, just making a move here, and then g4. Then it could be a big deal that I get excellent control of the black squares here. Of course, this is quite unrealistic, just trying to prove a point. Nakamura plays h3. He wants to avoid all the g4 nonsense, bishop g4, even knight g4 in some very rare cases, but it's not entirely impossible that black gets queen b6 and knight g4 in some line. So h3 is a prophylactic move. Maybe even play g4 in the future. So Wesley doesn't want to sit and just wait. He wants to strike and do something. And his move is great. He simply takes on f4. Knight takes f4 and d5. So this changes the position a lot. It changes the pawn structure. It changes the course of the game as well. It changes everything. And I think it was a good choice. And the computer also approves, as you can see there on the bar. And Nakamura takes on d5, knight takes b3, a takes b3, c takes d5. So what do we have now? We have two knights here. And then we have the bishop here for black. But this pawn here is slightly weak. So you could say that white could be slightly better. I'd say it's just roughly balanced here, with chances for both sides. So queen f3 attacking the pawn, bishop e6 defending it, and very interesting position we have here. And the question is, how do you continue as white? And it's not so very easy, but I think the plan Nakamura comes up with is quite good. He plays knight e2 here. He simply wants to put his knight on d4, queen c7, and knight d4. So this is indeed a good way to go. Even c3 here was possible, but I like knight d4. It's a very logical move. Yeah, so he's not afraid of bishop c5. If black does this, we can always play bishop e3. And remember, we can't really take here, because then I'll take back, and queen takes c2 is met by bishop takes f6, and the game is over. Actually, the advantage is like +4 here, which is crazy, but it makes sense considering that, you know, if you move the knight, I get knight h5, and I'm threatening a lot of things here. Well, bishop takes f6, so you have to protect the knight, and then I win this pawn, for example. But that's I digress. So bishop d7, knight e2 from Nakamura, and I'm not sure about that move. I'm not that sure, although it does make quite some sense. Maybe it's better to play c3, b4, and rook bishop e3, something like that. I think white is doing pretty well here. That's a nice position. But he plays knight fe2 with the plan of perhaps bishop f4, bishop g5, something like that. So a5 comes, taking some space. c3, now tightening up here, getting more control on d4. Rook e8, king h1, a prophylactic move the king out of the diagonal. There are no checks, nothing. And something like knight g3 here would have been possible as well. Of course, bishop f4. But king h1 is an alright move. Rook a6, that is a move I like, very creative. And the point is that we now guard f6 very nicely with the rook. And in some cases, rook b6 is possible, attacking the pawn on b3. And the knight could also move, and then black could play rook f6. So rook a6 is a good move. Rook f6, I mean. So rook a6, great move. Bishop f4, bishop d6, rook f2. Nakamura tries to triple, actually, in the f file. Not a bad way to go. b5. And Nakamura, he doesn't have anything to lose. It's all or nothing. So he decides to play g4, and it's a very interesting choice. The question, is it good? Is it objectively good, or is it simply not good enough? Well, it's not a bad move. The best move is perhaps to play b4 here, trying to clear things up. Knight b3 could come and stuff, so a4 makes some sense. You do not really want to play something like this, because then I can take here, and the black is doing very badly. His pawns are very weak, so you do not want to do that. So b4 is a good move, so black should then play a4, and then something like bishop takes d6, queen takes d6. So you know it is that black he has to defend quite a bit. This is pleasant for white, but as a matter of fact, it's not more than slightly better. However, I will say that I think it's, practically speaking, it's probably clearly better. But anyway, so g4, bishop takes f4, knight takes f4, rook e5, defending the pawn on d5, Once again, the plan with b4 is certainly possible. But Nakamura plays rook g1. He wants to play g5. And it's an aggressive move. Definitely is. Queen g3 was also interesting to take this diagonal. Slightly tricky way to play, and you're also trying to play g5. So if Nakamura wanted to play g5 that badly, he should have played queen g3, because he now also has potential tactics here, which could lead to problems for Wesley. And indeed, I think his position is fairly okay here. But he went for rook g1. h6 is the logical way to stop g5. So Nakamura, he keeps going at it. He plays h4. Very interesting. He's going to play g5 next, and then perhaps even g6. And if possible, take on d5. Queen c8 is a good defensive move by Wesley. And the point is that if I play g5 right now, black gets knight g4. And this is something you can't allow. And that's why Nakamura plays rook fg2, which is indeed the best move in the position. Unfortunately for Nakamura, he is simply too slow here, so plays g5. And there are no g5 breaks any longer. Takes rook takes, and black is starting to get a comfortable position here. It's not so easy to play white. And look how the pieces participate in the defense there. The rook on a6 in particular, very strong. And then all of the other pieces are pressuring the g4 pawn. It's a very good position for black. Or the objective evaluation is equal, but the position, I'd say, is much easier to play for black. So let's see what Nakamura did. He played knight h5, and this is a massive blunder. I'm not sure what he missed, but Wesley simply takes the pawn. I do not see what he missed. So you should have played something like queen e3 or whatever, but this is a move you do not want to make. The point is that if I take here with the knight, I can play rook queen e7. And, well, the position is very tricky, but here it's not so easy to find a move for black. I'll play something like rook e1 next, and I have a lot of pressure. It's kind of a computer way to play. And you can see it's not easy to play white, and Nakamura, he misses the mark with a knight h5. So knight takes g4 when it was possible. So rook takes g4, rook takes g4, knight f6 can simply be taken by the rook. Maybe he forgot that this rook covers f6. It's not impossible that he did that, but this position here is not very good for white. His king is far too weak, and he's a pawn down as well, and the position is lost, objectively speaking. So Nakamura decided to go back. He didn't have any other choice, and now the position has become awfully winning for Wesley So, who would be doing extremely well here if he did win this. Then Nakamura would have to win the third game with black and the fourth game with white in order to stay in the match. Rook f1 played. b4, trying to open things up a little bit more. Take 6, and yeah, look at all of these weak pawns for white. It's not looking very good for Nakamura as he plays queen g3, queen c7 by Wesley. There's a lot of pins going on here. So Nakamura plays knight de2, protecting both the knight and queen. Queen e5, centralizing the queen. d4, attacking the queen. Queen e4, pinning the rook. Knight e3 is a threat, so rook f3 is forced in order to prevent that. King h7, moving the king out of the way here. King g1, bishop g5, attacking the knight. King h1. It's very difficult to find a move here for white, so white just moves back and forth. Here the simple way to play is simply to take the knight. White is forced to take with the rook and then take another pawn. I mean, white's position is crumbling here, and the advantage is as high as 14 pawns for Wesley So here. That's crazy, but you can't really do anything special. Queen d1 is coming, and it's very difficult to find a move. Rook h5 could come. Like if I play rook f1, rook h5 is very strong, and you can't take because I take here. So I have to play king king g2, but then rook h2 wins the game for black. But Wesley played bishop d7, king g1, bishop b5, and then he actually took. So my bad. He actually decided to go for this. Hilariously enough. Rook takes e2, queen b1. So he should have simply grabbed the pawn there, but he didn't. He played queen b1, rook e1. So he takes this pawn instead. Certainly not a bad way to go. Knight h3, rook g6, knight e4. And I think Wesley didn't really find a continuation here. Because he makes a very bad blunder. He makes a very bad blunder, which changes the game entirely. So let's see what happened here. So instead, he plays knight e5, and now the game is completely equal. It's quite fascinating how things can change. So a simple move like rook g8 should be good enough, because now knight h5 is not possible because I take, and the mate is coming on h2. So you don't have many moves, maybe rook f1, and then I'll take on d4, and it's completely lost, more or less. But Wesley, he doesn't do that. He plays knight e5, and that is a blunder because of knight takes g6, knight takes f3, and I think Wesley must have overlooked something. Maybe knight f8, and then knight g7. White has a funny trick. I'm sure that's what Wesley overlooked. And you can simply play knight g6 back with a draw. Because if black takes, I'll play rook e8 check. King h7. King g7. Rook g8. King takes, and I'll simply play queen b8 and queen h8, and it's stalemate. It's a very nice trick. Nakamura went for knight d7, but the result is more or less the same. Wesley played rook e6, but if he plays rook g6, then, well, I can also take the knight. But the easiest way to draw is to do the same thing. Play rook g8, then queen b8, king h7, knight f6 check, king g7, queen g8, and then take here, and it's going to be stalemate. And you can't really escape with the king, and this is stalemate. So very nice theme here. Rook e6 by Wesley, but this position here is a draw. Queen takes d4, and White can take the draw whenever he wants to. He decides to check for quite some time. They check back and forth, but there is never any way to get through. It's too hard to do anything with the queen and knight here, unfortunately for Nakamura. And the game ends in a draw. Let's just quickly see what happened here. They just move back and forth a little bit. And at the end, Nakamura decides to take that pawn, and then he offers a draw. He realizes that there is nothing he can do, but he's lucky that he didn't lose, which he kind of would have deserved to do, I guess. Knight h5 was too careless, I'd say. But it happens. He had to win. He pushed. He did everything he could, but Wesley so defended very well. The best chance he had earlier was probably to play b4. I think his position is very nice if he does this. And then it's unpleasant for black, I think. Later on, I do not think really he had any chances. Wesley so played very, very well. And he missed the win. Fortunately for Wesley, it was enough. Nakamura, he drew the third game. He also drew the fourth game. So the final, which will be played out later today, will be Wesley so against the world champion Magnus Carlsen. So do stay tuned for that, and thank you for watching.